Welcome back to the Goku Report. Now, this time technically will be involving nerd culture, but I thought it was an interesting topic to discuss a little bit about here on my secondary channel. And that is the battle that has been raging now for a little while. Many years ago, it was a battle of different forms of media, different forms of physical media. Like for a time there, you had Betamax versus VHS. Then you had VHS versus Laserdisc. Then you had VHS versus DVD. And that battle, of course, VHS would lose. To the better quality, though, Laserdisc was much better quality than either Betamax or VHS. But let's be honest, it's because Laserdisc was insanely expensive to manufacture, which is why at the end of the day, grabbing this to show, which is why for many years when it came to physical media, this was the Titan, VHS. And if you're curious, yes, this is the complete original unaltered version of the classic original Star Wars trilogy. Before the special editions would exist, this existed on VHS. But with that said, also the fact is, you would continue having a battle of physical media for many more years to come. But basically in the early 2000s, thanks to new platforms besides DVD players, you had cheaper format called the PlayStation 2, which was by far the cheapest format of DVD playing, which is one of the many reasons the PS2 became and is still considered the king of consoles, because of DVD. Though later on, with of course a special remote, you could also play DVDs on original Xbox as well. But that would help expand the influence of DVD format, which is why it ended up easily surpassing. And thus DVD became the king of media. Then we would see a new battle rage who would replace regular DVD format for the new higher, of course, levels of quality in picture, sound, in these areas. You would have a battle between the HD DVD, which of course had an add-on for the Xbox 360 to play it on console. Then you would have the format Sony basically had the patent on, and of course that was Blu-ray. Now that battle went on for about 2 years or so. In the end of it, Blu-ray was what came out successful. We see that throughout history, like in physical media. We've had many different forms of, for instance, music. Like we've had strictly through the format of radio waves and stuff. For instance, music-wise with radio, and which radio still exists to this day. Though we have modern versions of radio, of course, that being, of course, like XM and things like that, more of an internet format than the traditional, but it carried on certain elements from the radio format over to an online format with a similar feel to it to help appeal to those who grew up with the other formats. But at the same time, with this new, a little bit more revolutionary with the whole also, I think one of the big things that really made like digital, oh, I guess you could say radio become big, was at one time we had like radio shows and stuff before really TV was the big mainstay media format of entertainment. You had many stories in radio shows that you would hear on the radio, like for instance, Invasion, was it War? I forget, dang it. But many classic stories were told through that format, through AM radio, as was many other things. And we would get modern takes of that, like in physical and now digital, things like audiobooks. Perfect example, we would see physical, like on CD, And now we have popular apps on Amazon and stuff through them, apps such as Audible, which is a really great app, which I highly recommend. But that is how we've adopted some of these older traditional formats to modern age, though it's gone more digital. Same with music. Music in the earlier days out, once people realized they wanted to carry, you had the invention of like a portable radio you could take around, listen to music anytime really you wanted. And then people decided they wanted to be able to have a physical version, like customized music and stuff just on the go here and there. You had the invention of the cassette tape. Cassette would really be the first moving forward. It was revolutionary for its time. We would see another format contend with cassette, though cassette would win that battle. Of course, that being 8-track. Now, I myself never had an 8-track player, but I know from growing up that my mother had a 8-track and constantly talked about 8-track, listened to things like the Beach Boys on 8-track. It's quite fascinating, really. But then we would see other standards like vinyls, which is still big to this day. I mean, the fact that you can still get vinyls to this very day. This is a picture, of course, vinyl for Disturbed's album, the, of course, Immortalized. Or rather, though this picture is the artwork for the track or single, The Vengeful One. It is honestly really cool. This was part of a package I got that came with a regular CD of the soundtrack, it came with a vinyl, and it came with a digital version with a couple of exclusive songs only available through that bundle, through Disturbed's own official website. But still, the thing is, when it comes to those formats, vinyl is something that has managed to stick around. It died out for a while, and now, in the 2010s, now in the early 2020s, vinyl is back. And it is, of course, surpassed in sales its replacement that people thought would be around for a very long time. Of course, that being CD. CD is definitely was the pinnacle of physical quality when it comes to physical media, at least music-wise. Nothing will beat the classic CD. I myself still on occasion, depending on what the artist or the music is, there are times I still want to have physical. Like specifically stuff like this, which is of course Jet Set Radio Future soundtrack. Now the thing about it is quality. CDs are actually pretty good though. To be fair, you can have as good, if not better quality for digital when it comes to music. But I think in many ways today with the more modern version, in my opinion, quality-wise, vinyls are probably the best overall quality in sound design. But at least as if you want physical. If you want digital, I can see music is a relatively much more easy, accessible thing. Now, in the format of, say, digital media in movies and TV shows, things of this nature, it's a little bit more different. Like I said, we start out in that thing with Betamax, VHS, then also Laserdisc, then DVD, HD DVD, then Blu-ray DVD. Now we have 4K Blu-ray DVD, which is the absolute highest pinnacle quality. Now, for the most part, in digital HD stuff, yeah, you can get like easily Blu-ray quality picture and everything, but I have yet to actually see a quality digital streaming wise service. Now there you can get pretty good quality digital if you buy strictly not through a regular streaming service, but like by download or whatever. Better quality done. But with that said, if you're wanting streaming like say through Hulu, Netflix, HBO Max, whatever, the quality is not going to be at the same level as, say, 4K Blu-ray. that will always be superior until they can do. But in order to do that quality in digital format, it's going to require a lot higher level of like internet service that is also going to use a whole lot more data. When you look at how much memory and data is used to play 4K streaming, whether it be video games or movies, it's insane how much data it uses. And now with companies like Comcast setting caps, and then you go over the like 1.2 terabyte cap, you're going to be paying a lot more money for Xfinity and other formats of digital or rather internet service. So you see, and say internet goes down, you're out of luck with digital. However, with physical, it's right there. As long as you have electricity and a device that can play that format, you're all good. There are I see many good arguments on physical versus digital, and that's what this video more or less is about, is the battle of physical media versus digital media. Now, it looks like that pretty much, unfortunately, physical movies and stuff are on their way out. There are going to be people like me that prefer like Blu-ray and stuff over digital format because you're not truly guaranteed control, because like Amazon and stuff like says in their agreements, when you buy some digitally, they don't actually own the patent or the rights to that movie. I'd say the contract is up and the movie company wants a little bit more money, Amazon's not willing to pay it, then they'll pull it off. It doesn't matter if you pay 20 or whatever dollars for the movie to own it. Since technically it's in the agreements and stuff, when you purchase a digital copy, that you don't actually own it. The company does. So, you will immediately lose that even if you pay $20, like it was proven recently with Amazon and stuff, that you don't actually own the movie. Technically, companies won't say you don't own it even if you have physical, but you really do have it, physical in hand. So that means you can pretty much always enjoy it as long as you have a device that can play that format. However, with digital, you don't really own it. You're at the behest of that company. So there's definitely a lot of drawbacks to digital media. There's definitely a lot more hurdles to overcome rather than what physical media has. In my opinion, unfortunately, things like physical movies, just like, for instance, I feel like Blu-ray, DVD, and stuff like that, good quality physical media, I feel like movies, physical movies, and things of that nature, as well as physical games, are going to become more niche. Like, you could say, like, well, perfect example, vinyls. Vinyls, yeah, are now have surpassed CDs in sales numbers because it's more about either the nostalgia factor growing up with vinyls. Now, me, even though I grew up mainly in the 90s, I'll admit when I was a kid I did have some vinyl records. So I'll admit there is a part of me that does like the whole feel and everything of a vinyl record. Nothing beats that, and watching it play on the turntable, it's honestly awesome. But this is coming from somebody who grew up in that time period. Now, for people that maybe teenagers watching this, teenagers today, or maybe you were born in the late 90s but really grew up more and mostly remember like the late 2000s onward, you're not going to probably have as much the same reaction to things like vinyls unless you just think it's cool from more of a retro or like vintage type standpoint. But like in the 90s, pretty much internet was very rare. Like we actually had computer classes. I only went 2 years to regular school, homeschool most of the time, but those 2 years in private school, I actually had to go to computer class. In the 90s, we actually had computer classes, believe it or not. Things were very different in the 90s. You didn't have internet everywhere. It was a very crappy dial-up. You had pagers more so than cell phones. Cell phones wouldn't really become more easy to get a hold of or more affordable until really the mid to late 2000s. Like, I didn't have my first cell until probably 2006. So up until then, I was used to having things like landlines. So yeah, things have really changed a lot throughout the years and the time periods. It's hard for me to look back now and realize that this is the second year of the 2020s. It blows my mind to think how many years have passed since then. To think it's been 22 years since the first of the prequel Star Wars films came out. 1999, Episode 1 came out. 22 years ago, Episode 1 came out. That blows my mind to think it's been that many years since the prequels started coming out. The same year that Brendan Fraser's The Mummy came out. But with that said, in gaming, I grew up, of course, in the 90s. I remember very fondly and being part of the 16-bit wars. Like, best well known probably... Best well known for this particular 16-bit battle, that being the Super Nintendo versus the Sega Genesis. Quite an interesting era. This was the ultimate powerhouse battle of the 16-bit era, was Genesis versus Super Nintendo, as well as the top two rival fighting game franchises of the same time period, Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, and still do battle to this day, though nowadays in sales numbers, I would say Mortal Kombat has a bit more of the upper hand now. But with that said, physical media unfortunately is dying out. Now, people want to say, for instance, though, at the end of the day, I do think that at the rate things are going, like when it comes to physical media, like video games, I think this is what's going to happen to video games. It will become more and more of a niche thing for people like me who prefer more physical. Though I know there's younger like gamers and stuff out there, like teens and early 20s, that are into physical media. Perfect example is the YouTuber Scott the Woods, which I recommend checking out if you've never checked out his channel. He has very interesting topics on different gaming, but I agree with him that things like, I think, strictly limited and, of course, limited run are the future of physical video games, in my opinion. This is what's going to happen in the future to video games. It will be probably more of a first come, first serve, like limited batch physical media-wise basis. That's what I think the future of video games is. At least physical is going to be services like these, is what I think is going to happen to video games. But people want to say physical media would be 100% dead if you listen to them the way some talk. Like by the end of like the 2000s, physical media was going to be dead. Like PC gamers in the 90s were talking like, oh, by the end of the 90s, early 2000s, game consoles are going to be completely dead. Everything is only going to be PC. Guess what? This is the year 2021, and consoles are still thriving. To the PC gamers out there who love to hate on game consoles, guess what? Nintendo still lives. Sony still lives. Heck, PlayStation is thriving better than ever. Now, it's obvious Microsoft is more focused more now on the software side of things and trying to sell, of course, their Xbox, which is more or less basically a gaming PC, a cheaper version. Gaming PC is what the Series X is. That's obvious. And they're focusing more and more on digital. Even Sony is focusing and putting a lot more effort into digital format nowadays, unfortunately. But there is still, I think, what will keep game companies, specifically like Nintendo, alive for more years to come is their niche. They realize to go more for a niche market, not try to compete with Sony and Microsoft in graphics and overall power. They realize they can never be able to compete against Sony in the juggernaut that is Microsoft. So Nintendo went a different route and decided to focus more on either like a niche or like a feature or something to make it distinctive. Like, for instance, the GameCube, it was the weird cube shape and the handle on the back. For the Wii, it was the motion controls. Though, in my opinion, I think the PlayStation Move is better overall quality wise. But then, of course, you had the Wii U, which was a real innovation from a certain perspective, though I actually feel had Sony put more time and stuff into it, I feel that the Vita with PS4 could have really surpassed anything the Wii U did, though I still think the Wii U did many things good and right, and it's through these different experiments throughout the past decade and a half Nintendo finally put all of these ideas together, like also the whole testing out the niche of the DS with the dual screens worked great. Then they tried the niche of 3D effects without needing glasses with the 3DS. Then we finally come to the zenith of their different testing new niche markets and things of that nature with the Switch, and it has definitely paid off through their evolution of experimentation. That, in the end, I think is what is going to allow companies like Nintendo to thrive for, I still think, more years to come. No matter how much some PC gamers may want to hate on consoles and call themselves, of course, unfortunately, Yahtzee had to create that meme, the PC Master Race term. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, I mean, some people, you can enjoy your PCs, enjoy your mouse and keyboards. Like in the 90s, I did play occasionally, like on Windows 95 and stuff on PC. I played a lot of Jet Fighter games on PC back in the day. I'll admit, as time has gone, I prefer the playstyle and the format of consoles, especially the exclusives. I'm not a big supporter of emulation, especially illegal emulation. I completely am on the side of Microsoft and Nintendo when it comes to going after people legally in those areas. I think because when you do start it up and stuff, you have a thing you have to say yes or no. You agree to the terms of service and stuff on. Same way with also using online features on fighting games. You have to agree to these terms to follow online to conduct yourself to show respect for others and stuff and not rage quit. These are different things to keep in mind, and people have to remember you're going to have to learn to take some of this stuff more seriously. I mean, especially on other things, but at the end of the day, I think physical versus digital media format is probably going to be a battle that's going to go on for possibly another decade or two. It's hard to say at the end of the day. I also feel the console versus PC battle is still going to keep going on for a long time to come. I mean, let's be honest, the Switch has now sold around 65 to 66 million units worldwide already. Even at the failure of the Xbox One has sold almost 50 million units, and the PS4 they said will surpass 120 million by the end of this year. So consoles are thriving. They're still doing just as good as ever. So people can say that console wars and all this is dead. It's not. And I think it's for the best. We need competitiveness. We need competition. Competition creates better products, better pricing. That's what people don't realize. When Nintendo at one time was drunk with power and stuff, it allowed somebody like the Sega Genesis to rise up, and it allowed Nintendo to be also beat up. Them and Sega became too cocky in the 90s, and then Sony beat the crap out of both of them in the fourth console generation, though I love both Sega and Nintendo for different reasons. But the fact of the matter is, let's be honest, this whole competition between digital, physical formats is going to be going on for a long time to come. I can tell just from looking at history and technology development. I do think physical is going to become more and more of a niche market for people like myself, especially being a collector, but I will always enjoy physical games, physical media in general. I will. But with that said, leave a comment below. What is your personal thoughts on the physical versus the digital media wars? But I'll see y'all next time. Stay safe. And just be careful right now. We have a giant winter storm raging. Got hit this morning by a bunch of ice, and now waiting for snow to start falling. But I'll see y'all next time. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel. Hopefully you enjoyed the music in the background.